very good set of panelists that we have. We have three of the largest oil and gas producers in the country, and of course we have the service providers, the people who run the equipment, the fields on an ongoing basis. But look, there is a lot that has already been spoken about in terms of the opportunities that ENP presents, and there were three things that stood out when the last session was going on, when many people were talking about the opportunities. I think number one, India will continue to be an energy guzzling economy. It will continue to grow at about 4% till 2040, and it will continue to consume all types of energy, hydrocarbons, non-hydrocarbons. I think there is scope for all forms of energy being consumed. The second, of course, is that if you look at oil and gas clearly has 2, if not more decades within the overall India ecosystem, so the time to accelerate investment and activity within ENP sectors is right now. And last but not the least, there is one other fact which I wanted to present to all our panelists and get their reactions, is that Indian oil and gas production over a period of time, in spite of the magnificent steps that have been taken by the government, by the operators, by the service industry, Indian oil and gas production has not increased. It has in some areas continued to remain stagnant, in some areas it has declined. We are sitting on a large set of mature assets. And hence, the first question that, ma'am, I wanted to start off with you, was to understand that you spoke of a lot of very great opportunities, but from your perspective and leading one of the largest exploration campaigns within the country, do you see are the challenges which are being faced by ENP within the country, and what can we do to overcome those?
I think I would need to categorize those challenges. Of course, with exploration, the biggest challenge, is trying to carry out risk mitigation studies. Uncertainty is always there. And the subsurface, as you know, has always intrigued us. But looking at might be the past 6 decades of exploration in India, wherein it is a very focused kind of an exploration in terms of data acquisition as well as integrated interpretation. Right now, from that point of view, I don't find any challenges which cannot be overcome. There are difficulties, yes. Timelines need to be adhered to. I think, as I already mentioned, this is one of the best times exploration can have within the country. We have the renewables, or the threat of renewables overcoming the oil and gas. But still for India, I think another good 2 decades of oil and gas exploration as well as production can be really brought about. The challenges, I think it is more, I would say, when I look into it, it is the challenge of overcoming the inhibition. I think over a period of time, and this is sort of an analysis which I did, our risk-taking capacity has somehow decreased. When we were going in for exploration in the initial days, we would just go with whatever data we had. Right now, since there are so many technologies available, there are so many types of data which can be acquired, we want to have them all. First we want to have them all, and then we think, okay, if I have a 2D, I would like to have a 3D. If I have a 3D, I would also like to have a gravity, and that way. So I think the biggest challenge for me, I think I'll say, is actually trying to take that first step. When we were doing an analysis right on when I came, then I said, even within the realm of exploration or the exploratory wells which we are doing, are we really doing exploration, or is it kind of a step out exploration? So from now on, what we have tried to find out is doing more of wildcat. There are a lot of areas in the country where I think just waiting for more data to be acquired, I think it is going to be a waste of time. And even if you have the best of surface data in terms of the seismics also, I think till the time you actually drill a well, the proof of the oil or gas being there or not being there, it's not done. So the biggest challenge, I think, for any operator or for even the NOCs is to take that big leap of faith, so to say, as CMD Oil was saying, and drill that first well, because that is going to tell me a lot of information about the surface. So that's the biggest challenge right on. And in terms of the regulatories, if I look into it, I think even the government of India has been very helpful. Of course, we had a discussion within ministries and with the advisor from PMO about, taking blocks, and what DG sir right now presented about, any operator trying to develop any kind of energy. So I think right now we have more freedom. In fact, it's become like a choice whether I go for a subsurface or go for the surface. So, and we are doing that in some of our assets, along with the production of oil. In the western sector, we are also doing solar. So, I myself see a huge potential in geothermal. So I think we need to sort of group. So as such saying, I think challenges and technologies right now, whether it be in the interpretative domain or whether it be in the acquisition or processing domain, I think the technologies have also come up really well. So it all lies upon us to just go forward and take that first step.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. I really like the point you raised about the value of information. How much more information do you actually need before you actually make that step or do the spud, so to say. Moving on, let me come to you, Mr. Goswami. We will change gears a little bit and come to production, which is another key part of the overall value chain. And Oil India, produces in some of the most difficult terrains, at least from an onshore perspective. From a production standpoint, what do you think can be a great unlock to relieve some of the challenges that we face in ramping up production, and specifically in the context of mature fields?
Before I say something, I just like to compliment and thank the entire organizers for organizing such a topic, at a relevant topic, when there are overlapping disruptions across the energy industry. So this is the right point of time when we can discuss these things, and I'm feeling very privileged to be here with you, and I hope within these 2 days the conference will be able to chalk out good way forward for the E&P industry. So Madam has already taken up major technical events, technical things that are being considered as a challenge in oil industry, but Madam is very right in saying, and I also believe that nothing is a challenge now. We always look the challenges as opportunities. So these are big opportunities coming up for us. Talking about the matured fields, India was very blessed to have the first oil in the year 1889 long back, and throughout this journey we have developed from northeast then to the coastal areas. Now all these fields are matured, and whatever major interventions, the innovative interventions you do, the matured fields can give a small amount, not a big sum. So we are now looking for bigger avenues, bigger fields where we can have new oil. Initially we talked about new oil in old fields, but we are now talking about new oil in new fields. So all these OLPs have opened up areas where we can work and we can find out new oil in new fields. This both oil and ONGC is taking it up very seriously, and we have both oil and oil. ONGC has ramped up their acreages right now, and we have been working very hard to accept the production enhancement. So if I talk about Oil India Limited, we are looking for a big jump in production from our matured field only. Throughout our journey, we have been working in a range of 3 million production. So we have now a plan for 4 million, and we have taken a mission 4+ for that. So accordingly, we have been taking up 5 thrust areas of the old fields only, where we have been extensively going for exploration and drilling. And with that, we are expecting that there will be a quantum jump in production immediately. So this is one aspect of accepting the challenges and taking it as an opportunities. But at the same time, if you look into the international areas, like the entire world, the energy landscape is changing. The geopolitical arena is experiencing lots of difficulties these days, and the polarization is actually coming in the way of trade flow, the knowledge and information flow, and the entire people are in the, and all the stakeholders and even the investors are looking at the different angles of oil and gas production. So energy as a whole is a different aspect, but oil and gas production, when we talk about, people are taking it differently. There are murmurs across the corners that there will be changes in the energy scenario. So on that basis, definitely there are changes coming up as a oil and gas industry. But India having a very big population, definitely the energy demand will remain. But if you have to believe the people saying these things, then there will be definitely changes. So these are the challenges, but we always take these challenges as an opportunity. Now Government of India has come up with transformational changes in the policies and all the no-goes areas are now being opened up for exploration. Then both oil and ONGC are constantly going on with these new areas. So these are the new opinions coming up for all of us. So I hope I will not call all these as the challenges. We'll be able to, together we'll be able to acquire these new areas, go to new areas and overcome these challenges.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Goswami. Like the phrase which you used, that new oil in new places. And talking about new oil in new places, let me come to Mr. Ghosh and talk a little bit about specifically OALP. It has been a path-breaking regime, and Vedanta Cairn has a large OALP portfolio. If my memory serves me right, 55 blocks. So how are you managing this portfolio? And operationally, you have, again, a very widespread portfolio from Assam to Rajasthan to offshore. What are the challenges that you are seeing, particularly from an OALP perspective, to drive early monetization as well as, addition of R&R?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kaustubh. Quite a daunting question and a daunting task everybody asks us. See, OLP came at a time when we are changing regimes from the PSC to the RSCs, and it came after a decade. So, and when the entire country opened up. So that's the time we had to be bullish, and we relied on the geology of India, and we believed in it with the multi-billion barrel of oil equivalent potential, and that's how we forayed into OLP. Cairn has been an early mover. So before I come to the challenges, let me say how we came into it. So Cairn has been an early mover. We have been studying these different basins from time to time with our partners as well. And we have so far drilled around 15 wells, already made 5 discoveries, 2 of them are on the monetization cycle. That doesn't mean that we haven't faced any challenges. So when we took up OLP, the key element of that, when you operate 12 basins with multiple blocks, we are operating close to around 46 OLP blocks right now. Key thing is data. And we wanted to acquire very high quality data. And when you want to acquire high quality data, you have to get into that acquisition space. So we embarked on a huge acquisition program. We almost mobilized 2 crews in Rajasthan, several in Assam, and even mobilized an offshore seismic crew. But as we embarked on it, the key challenge we faced was the pandemic and the downturn. So when those things happen, you have to take a stock of affairs, how to move things around. A lot of things remain unfinished or uncompleted because of lack of mobilization. Or even when you sell the boat in Kutch, I still remember the boat couldn't come back we better utilized it for acquisition of data. So these sort of operational and executional challenges we faced. But we didn't stop there. While we were challenged on the ground, we were flying our airborne surveys. So we covered around 40,000 square kilometers and panned across the entire northeast, western onshore around Cambay and Rajasthan, and even flew the airborne gravity over offshore. So that kept us going. That kept us going. But another challenge what we also faced was that the time which we thought that we would take to break the cycle time, start drilling wells. While we started drilling wells even in the pandemic, it took us more time to get the entire resources onboarded because the pandemic was a big hindrance. We thank the government for giving us those leeways, giving us those time extension, but we see that it's very, very insufficient because we are still impacted by the cascading impacts. Even to mobilize multiple service lines, getting your long lead items, it takes time. It takes time. So this is one challenge. Timeline is a challenge in exploration. And we are glad and we are encouraged the way government has taken these suggestions from what we have done in OLP 1 and 2 rounds or even the 3 rounds and made those changes in the new MRSCs as well in the new rounds. We'd also request the government if that can be retrofitted as well in some way through some policy mechanisms. Another challenge we often faced was when we go to execute, we bring a lot of efficiency in execution. But to get to the execution itself took us a lot of time. Whether it's permitting, whether it's access, whether it's clearances, whether it's land, whether it's getting a forest to be cleared or getting an afforestation land so that we can go and drill a well. It took us about less than a month to drill a 3,500 meters to 4,000 meter well in Assam, but it took us more than 1.5 years to 2 years to get that access to get to drilling. So we are glad and we are thankful to DGH and the government of Assam. Now that we have a standardized SOP, we can break that cycle time in months. So that's where we are. So this entire learning, entire challenge is converted into learning, and all the industry, whatever feedback we gave to the government, we are encouraged that the DGH and MOPNG has taken it, and we are moving in a positive way. So while we see these challenges, but the challenges now translate into a new paradigm of what we can do more. So hence you see that we have now embarked in our high impact wells in the offshore. We are already drilling a well in western offshore. We have plans to drill more wells this year, and we are poised at a point where we are ready to take a growth path. I think the industry at large faces similar sort of challenges, especially with OLP, with the new reforms. We are quite encouraged, and we'd like to partner for that growth for the nation.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Ghosh. The statistic on the time that it takes to get the clearances versus the time that it takes to actually drill a well is something for all of us to ponder over. But changing gears, let me come to the other half of the table, so to say. We have heard the top oil producers in the country, but the people who keep the engine running, so to say, I think they are an important say as well. So let me start with you, Mr. Malhotra. And I will put a bit of a global question to understand your perspective. Oil price has come back after the pandemic in a very, very strong way. And what it has led to, apart from just the impact of the war on the oil prices, the tightening of the overall supply chain market globally, which means that there are more operators out there looking for good rigs, good manpower, and hence what will that lead to from a challenge perspective for the Indian E&P industry? Have we acted fast enough to safeguard against the global tightening of the supply chain that has happened post the high oil price? It's a bit of a loaded question, but an important one.
Thank you, Kaustubh, for that question, and thank you, E&P Conclave, actually, to be able to get the good mix of both the E&P operators, our customers, and the service sector together for this forum and on the table together, actually. So coming to the question in terms of global tightening, you are absolutely correct, right? So what has happened, with the double dip of 2014-15 downturn caused by excess oil coming out of the North American, the frac revolution which happened there, and then combining it with the second dip which came with COVID, the service sector has particularly become a bit shy on when will the next dip come, right? So any investments which are happening today have that caution attached to them that this is not going to be forever, that this is finite, right? And there is a lot of cash being recovered from all the losses which have happened in the last 7-8 years. So with that caution, what comes is investment, more prudent investments, which is happening on the service sector. But currently, the international market and the North American market both are growing at a fairly fast pace. So the challenge which comes to the Indian sector, particularly in this global environment, is not only that we have to compete with our traditional competitors like who are sitting with me on the table, but also internally, right? When I am bidding out for a project or preparing for a project, I am not only competing locally, but I am competing globally for the same set of resources which could be easily getting deployed to the offshore Atlantic market or to the Middle East market in Saudi Arabia, which is pulling lots and lots of resources today, or to even right next door in Abu Dhabi, etc., right, where the operators are really trying to crank up their production. So that challenge stays, where we need to fight both externally and internally to get those resources. Now, the solution, after stating the problem, really comes, in my opinion, in 3 ways, right? One is efficiency increase, right? We need to do more with the existing assets, right? Whether it is rigs, whether it is vessels, whether it is downhole tools. We need to get into the correct contract models, whether it is performance contracts. But basically, we need to be able to do more with our assets, right? Today, if I take an example for our downhole tools, typically a downhole tool spends up only about 3 days in a month doing what it is supposed to do, which is downhole, acquiring data or drilling or whatever it is supposed to do. Right, so that's 10% of useful time in a month. And if I compare that to the airline industry, if you have a plane which always runs with only 10% of the seats occupied, that airline industry will not survive for too long, right? But that's the reality of our sector today. So how do we increase efficiency, right? And that goes into multiple domains. Basically contracting models to be able to share assets at least across the same operator, but even going beyond across multiple operators which are operating in the same part of India, that will ensure that we are able to do more with the same amount of assets. Even changing the contracting model to ask for a deliverable instead of defining the number of tools which are needed to do the job, because that would be contract management instead of doing project management, right? Ideally, the operator should be interested in the deliverable, not how the service sector is getting to that point. And lastly, on the efficiency side would be digital tools, right? Today, we are able to, today when I want to withdraw money from the bank, I actually don't go to the bank anymore, right? When I need to transfer money to a friend or to a family, I do that on my phone or my laptop. But today we are still sending loads and loads of people offshore or to the land rig to drill the well, right? We are still operating as if the digital transformation has not happened today. But really speaking, there are many tools available to the service sector today where we are able to do a large portion of the job working remotely, right? We do still have to send some humans to the well site. I'm not saying we can go to zero today, but we are able to reduce easily, and we have many examples globally, our crew size by 50%. Right, so those are the type of efficiencies, one on the asset side and one on the people side, where we can use the same number of assets, same number of people to do more on the efficiency side. The second point on the solution I'll briefly hit on is technology, right? So technology will continue to evolve. We have better technology today than 20 years back, even 10 years back, and I'll take 2 examples briefly to sort of address the conclave, one on the exploration side and one on the production side. So today we have a technology which, for an exploration environment, we can completely substitute well test, right? We are able to, once the discovery is done, and if we feel confident, we are able to deploy that technology and completely take away the need for well testing. It will require certain regulatory framework, obviously, to be able to accept that as a valid well test, which many countries in the world have done that. But that is one example where we can, increase the pace at which we are able to bring a discovery online. And taking an example of technology on the production side, specifically focusing on offshore stimulation environment, going to the production on enhancing production, we have some fantastic new technology diverters and stimulators which are able to divert the acid, let's say for example, which is needed for stimulation exactly to the part of the formation which needs that, right? Instead of doing a blind job of pumping acid throughout the reservoir. Right, so there are many technological solutions. I just decided to hit upon two which can increase the pace and to ensure that we are able to handle the challenges which the E&P sector for India is bringing to us. And last but not the least, and here taking a cue from Mrs. Rawat also, who hit on timing of the projects, right? So as a service industry, it's very important, particularly when we are competing for those assets globally, that we have a good picture on when the project is going to happen, right? Because what we do is we secure assets with our respective headquarters, that let's say a certain project will happen in second quarter of 2024, and we ask for our headquarters for resources for that particular time. But if that project ends up shifting by 2 quarters, 3 quarters, that really ends up being a lot of wasted effort, and sometimes we end up losing the resource completely because the resource is given to some other country, some other part of the organization, right? So as much advanced view we can get from the operators of which projects are coming online so that we are able to dedicate resources would be a last part of the solution to address that challenge from the E&P sector for India perspective.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Malhotra. You spoke about both digital initiatives as well as technology. So let me come to Mr. Harter and check that, digital, and I know Mr. Das, DG had spoke about it. What is really the power of digital in E&P? If you can just elucidate some of the examples that you see from your vantage point and how that can add value to the overall E&P value chain, then that would be really helpful from the perspective of solving some of the challenges that our panelists have already spoken about.
Yes, thank you. I think that digital transformation can achieve some of the same results here in India for operators here in India that it has in other parts of the world. And basically, you can think of digital transformation as being the ability to connect qualified, relevant data with some analytic tools to enable better decisions and increased operating efficiency. So the business value of digital transformation has to either be you're improving the quality of the decision, and by that it means that the expected outcome from that decision has higher value. You've been able to make a better decision based upon having the right data and the right predictive models surrounding that data. Or the value from digital transformation comes about from operational efficiency. And I think it's useful to think about operational efficiency two different ways. One is financial efficiency. In other words, can you increase the revenue or can you decrease the cost? That's an obviously easy thing to measure, and that has value. But I think it's also useful to think about human productivity. Even though you can translate that to a cost, I think it's different because human resources are not fungible. Humans are not a substitutable resource, and we have to deal with the knowledge workers we have, and we want to make sure that we let them work on the problems that generate the most value to the company. So the savings in making somebody an explorationist or a drilling engineer more productive is a lot more than just the amount of time times their salary. It's the opportunity, lost opportunity, if they're not working on the things that generate the most value for the company. So again, I think those are the key areas where we can deliver business value. And I think the key to conducting a successful digital transformation project is first understand what problems are important for your company. Different companies have different business objectives, and you might design a program based upon those. So a company whose key goal is trying to increase their reserves or increase their reserves replacement ratio, they're going to have a focus on trying to do things that will address that. Perhaps it's being able to compress the timeline for analyzing data and making drillable prospects, so making that more efficient. Or maybe it's trying to improve the process for evaluating buying opportunities, asset evaluation. So again, depending what your business challenges are, you'll pick problems and then Maybe it's on the production side. Maybe you're mainly at the phase where you're trying to optimize production of an existing field, or maybe you're doing new field development, you have a lot of drilling activity. In that case, maybe your focus will be on problems that affect the productivity of drilling. How do you reduce the drilling time? Or maybe it's on the production side. How do you reduce the downtime? So again, your goals are going to be different based on what your business challenges are. So once you've defined the important problems, something that if solved will affect the bottom line, then you need to figure out what data needs to be available to enable that. So if it's an operational type goal, then it might be that you identify the streams of real-time data. Maybe you need to provide more access to the drilling operation data or the production operation streaming data. Whereas if it's maybe more on the exploration side, then it may be identifying the sorts of static data, historic information about what your company and other companies have done in terms of exploration in that area. Be able to harvest the previous information. So that will identify the static data. Then you need to figure out what sort of predictions do you need to make. And so you may employ some different types of technology, and this is an area that's changing rapidly. How do you make predictive models based upon that data? The predictive models may be physics-based. In other words, you might do reservoir simulation to predict what you should do in a given field. Or could be stochastic-based. Just if you have enough data, you can look at the statistics of it and make some projections just without understanding the physics of it, just looking at the actual historic statistics. Or thirdly, an area that's increasing relevant in our world is AI-based prediction, where you basically are taking the data, the rich set of data you have, potentially both static and dynamic, and trying to make some predictive model using AI to give you some insight to what you should do. But in any case, those are all parts of this digital transformation strategy. And understanding your problems, understand your data, provide access to the qualified data, and provide the tools to analyze and make predictive models. That ends up in improved business outcomes. And examples of types of business transformations we've seen with different companies. If you're in a field that we're using electric submersible pumps, having the ability to be able to predict based upon analyzing the streaming data and historic data, incipient pump failure, can allow you to schedule maintenance more rationally and reduce the amount of unscheduled downtime. That's an example of kind of an operations goal. Another type of digital transformation is looking for drilling. I mean, if your key metric is what's the amount of time it takes to drill a well, and I understand that may not always be the key limiting factor, but sometimes it is. If you're in certain areas where you have a rapid rate of drilling wells, improving the drilling rate can have a big impact. They're analyzing the data, like looking at the historic data, including geologic models, and integrating that with real-time streaming data can help you to, for example, figure out when to optimally change your drill bits, reducing the overall non-productive time in drilling a well. So again, there are many different examples of digital transformation helping companies.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Harter. In the interest of time, we'll have to restrict it to one question per panelist, but I will come back to all the panelists for an additional question before I finish with Mr. Sethi. Mr. Sethi, India on an annual average does about 700 to 800 wells per year. This is much lower as compared to the global average. If you compare ourselves to the likes of the US or to China, we are significantly lower. We are lower by an order of magnitude. What is the reason for that? Means, is it the public procurement process? Is it the speed of decision making? Or is there something else because of which we are so low as compared to the global benchmark? Because our assumption is that if we are able to reach global benchmark purely in terms of just drilling activity, we will be able to cover a substantial or we will be able to make a significant uplift in our overall domestic production. So your perspectives in terms of why is that the case?
So I think, a part of the answer is in the question itself. I think there are two aspects to it. One is supply chain. I think supply chain is an issue. And second is, as because I don't want to repeat what some of the panelists have said, is regulatory mechanisms, right? I mean, even if you fix your supply chain and you can actually drill the wells in a with new efficiencies, it doesn't matter if you can't, get the permission to drill the well in the first place. A lot of places, like, let's first talk about production, right? So you have a marginal field where, if you say if you start fracking the wells, you start making more money, and then, your production goes up. But the cost of fracking can determine whether that well is going to be commercial or not. I mean, some of the wells that you come in on land are like, they produce 100 barrels a day. And that can, fracking at $200,000 or fracking at $50,000 can make a huge difference to the economics of the well. So I think that efficiency has to be driven through supply chain. But I think where we have been focused, and this is not just something that we see in public sector companies. This is also a practice that is permeated to private sector companies, is the L1 model. I think beyond what everybody has said, right, we have to look at alternate models where time, technology, efficiency and cost are all taken into account and new KPIs are defined. And this is, by the way, ONGC is doing it in some tenders. There are KPI-based, technology-based acquisitions in ONGC. And I think that's very, very crucial for us to drive the efficiencies that we're talking about. Secondly, I think this also, one is the L1 model. The second is the time it takes for us to procure. See, we have been waiting for a steam vessel in the Western Offshore for now 4 years. We are not able to address the issues of acquisition. We are not able to procure rigs on time. We are not able to get boats on time. We are not able to get trucks, and we are not able to acquire. I mean, this is beyond regulatory mechanism, right? So I think and some of that goes back to regulations and policy and cost recovery issues. So I think we need to address these things at a root. And I think there has to be a dialogue between the operators, the service companies, and the regulators to see that, suppose I took a decision to acquire something because on the overall value stream, it made more sense. It should still be approved for cost recovery. And I think those are fundamental things that we need to take care of if we really need to scale up. Once you do that, then I think there is no dearth of optimism. There's no dearth of capital in our companies. And all said and done, India and the operators here offer us a very, very stable platform for long term. I mean, I can plan my business for the next 7 to 8 years because of ONGC, Oil India, Reliance, and Cairn. Because they do not deviate. We see the upside, we are not scaling up as fast, but we don't downscale when the downturn happens. But having said that, 700 wells, 800 wells is just not enough for us to statistically make an impact. I mean, if you're drilling 150 exploration, why not drill 650? Because we believe that those prospects exist. Statistically, we'll just do better. And on production, we just need to, ramp up. So I think for a country like of India's size and the number of fields and the acreage we have, at least 3,000 to 4,000 wells will have a significant and a material impact on what we do today. Thank you.
So hello. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mr. Sethi. Any parting comments? I know we are at the top of the time we had, but any parting comments specifically on some of the points that were raised by Mr. Sethi in terms of, and would be good to hear from maybe you, ma'am, just to understand the other side perspective of some of the points that were raised in terms of why we are not able to get to that activity level that we were talking about.
See, I think the first and the foremost thing which we need to do is the timelines and the project management. I think somewhere along the way, we all of us are not very good at it. That is all I can say. In terms of the regulatories and the clearances, that is, I think, applicable to the acreages which are on land and having some forest areas. Offshore is absolutely free. We don't need to get those kind of clearances. Supply chains, I think for the service providers, it shouldn't be a problem because you are connected globally. It's only for the NOCs, I would say, that we have to go through each and every aspect of the government regulations. But even then, I think they are not that kind of an hindrance. I do not know what the reason is. Might be what Mr. Ghosh said, you know, post-pandemic there might have been a cascading effect in the supply chains. But if I look from my company's perspective, or the requirements which exploration has, one is of course the size of the company. I mean, comparing it to China, or for that matter USA, would not be an apple to apple comparison. And we are of course not doing unconventional or shale gas, shale oil, wherein in US we are drilling a huge number of wells. I mean, talking both from the NOC's perspective, I think some kind of a slippage, if I may say so, has been on the supply chain, which is connected globally, not because of the NOCs or not because of the Government of India's regulations. So we have been very, yes, regarding the tenders and you know, the requirement, of course, we are currently in a process. I mean, at least I can share that within ONGC, we are in a process of improving the whole procurement process, or awarding the contracts. So in a couple of months, I think the delays which were happening, we would be doing away with. But still it intrigues me, you know, and I have been looking at all aspects. Do we really need to drill so many number of wells? I mean, does the number of well, is it more important, or the optimal you know, objective of the well being met? And this is one question I'm asking even the production people. You know, do I need to drill 3,000 or 4,000 wells just for my recoveries, or the way we are addressing the reservoir, that has to become much more efficient, or the pressure maintenance? So the number of wells, not so important, I think, but yes, we do need to increase the pace of exploration or exploitation of the you know, of a discovered field. Monetization is one aspect, but I think ONGC, let me say, has learned a very hard lesson. So we have become a little bit more nimble-footed in terms of the monetization of the discoveries, and that will improve. So that's the one thing. Offshore, in the new OLP round, I think offshore acreages would be a big focus. So in terms of getting clearances, we can do away with that. I mean, we are very well aware, and I know what Biswanath was talking about. They have got more than 7,000 square kilometers of acreage in the northeast itself. So yes, I can imagine, you know, it takes time, but I think overall said and done, with the Urja Pragati portal coming, this is, there has been a speeding up of the entire process. So again, or might be you can say I'm an optimist, so I'm just looking at the brighter side. But when you compare, you know, to the way exploration or production had been going on, and we are an old company, if you look at the nation, I mean the age of the nation and the age of the company. So we know what all we went through, and it was much, much more difficult. I see files in which the clearances have taken more than a decade. So right now, if I'm just taking a year, it is good enough for me, honestly speaking. But yes, we do need to work on the project management side, the integration of the you know, the timelines for the service providers, where the supply, when it is coming, what are my acreage timelines, and the minimum work program commitments. So yes, it is difficult, but again doable. And service providers, most of the time we depend, more than half of the things which we depend upon is from the service providers. So that's.
Yeah, let me answer. Definitely the number of wells, Madam has rightly said, it's not always important. We have been working in Northeast for last 60 years and we have been producing at the same level without going for a big number of wells every year. But still, it's proud maybe for us that we have been yet now after 60 years also we are drilling exploratory wells in those areas. So that's why I have said the old well, or new oil in the old areas. So that we have been doing that, we have mastered already. And regarding production from the oil wells, basically it's an optimization, how to optimize the production. There are various ways of optimization. We have been doing various ways, various means of adopting optimization we have been doing. And secondly, the EOR, IOR activities also, that also helps in maintaining the production. So these are the various ways we have been maintaining production for so many years. And at the same time, number of wells also required because there is always a constant decline from the old areas. So we need to produce from new wells. And there will be another issues like water cut, there will be sand ingression, all those issues. For some reason we have to close some of the wells, the replacement wells are definitely required. But Kaustubh, you are also right, the number of wells that we drill in India is comparatively very less compared to US and other places. And Mr. Sethi has rightly pointed out, it's to be accepted that project management is not that good in our country. Maybe for the PSU culture, we have been in a different space of working for a long time. But now the new energy companies are coming up, probably the things will go fast now. So that is what we are expecting. He has rightly said that L1 may be one of the hindrances that we go for the L1, the lowest bidder technology, which may not be the best one. But now I know ONGC and both Oil India, we have now taken a step that we have a different policy for new technology induction. So this is not L1. We go for the technology directly and we can take it. So these are the new things coming up. We are changing our model and hope with this we'll be able to conquer new horizons in the coming days.
Yeah, just few more things. I'm just touching upon on the point, the urgency of the nation to find more resources and reserves, and how do we grow from where we are, amongst what we apply as technology, amongst what we do as operators. So one thing I wanted to say, and I've been talking about this in multiple forums, is we need to collaborate. Whether it's in terms of data, we see that the data in India is now getting liberated. We have data liberalization policy coming in. So I've been even talking about one nation, one cloud, where we can expose all the data we have amongst all the operators for the machine crunching. And the NDR and the NDR stage 2 is obviously going to help. We see that coming. Another thing is how do we get the right service line and technology in this space? Across all service line, I know this has been a discussion in multiple other forums elsewhere, is how can you get to a multi-client model? So for example, if ONGC, Oil India, has got a rig and service line available, maybe they have a gap, maybe other mid-sized or small-sized operators can utilize that. Okay. So, or any other operator for that matter, can we create a consortium of operators who could use this multi-client model, wherein what Neeraj was saying or what Vinay was saying, if those typical service lines are available, we can use it on a multi-client model. We already see that happening in the multi-client seismic space. Why not in the rig line and service line space? Even for data and solutions for that matter. So these things will fast track and harness the cognitive ability and the knowledge base of the subsurface and bringing it on the execution lines across different operators to find more oil and gas. And that even applies for production. I leave that thought to the conclave. Yeah.
All right, I think this conversation was starting to get really interesting, but in the spirit of project management, we will have to end it at a reasonable hour. But thank you so much, Ms. Rawat, Mr. Ghosh, Mr. Goswami, Mr. Malhotra, Mr. Harter, and Mr. Sethi. We could have gone on for a few more hours because all of us are very passionate about the topic, but we will end it here. And thanks for everyone who was listening in. And we have done many of these panel discussions, and always the question is, yet another panel discussion. Hopefully, and I personally take the onus that we will put together a note and circulate it amongst people. And maybe it's something that we can through the, organizers, channel it to the DGH and see if there can be action, because we don't just want it to be another panel discussion with such eminent panelists. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll continue this conversation in the next few such meets. Thank you.